Hello and welcome. In this video I'm going to be introducing you to Bamboo, a continuous integration and automated build application. So let's get started. I'm going to go to bamboo.ntc.edu and I'll log in with the same credentials that I've been using to log into Jira. Once we log in, we can see that the look and feel is going to be a lot like Jira. We have a menu up above, we have our profile information, settings, etc. After logging in, we're taken to the dashboard. This dashboard shows all of the build plans that we have access to, and we can also use a filter to filter down the list of build plans that we would see here. This list can sometimes get pretty long. So let's dive right in and create our first build plan. To create a build plan, which is a lot like what we would do to create an issue in Jira. So I'm going to go ahead and select Create, and create a new plan. For my new plan, I'm going to select the examples project. If you wanted to specify your own name, you could do that by selecting New Project and then specifying the plan name and the plan key. But I'm going to go ahead and use my existing examples project. For my plan name, I'm going to use RG Video Example. And you can see that by specifying the plan name, it's automatically generated for me a plan key. And I like to use my initials in my plan name, if it's anything that's just specific to what I'm doing, just because this plan key should be unique. I'm not going to specify anything for the plan description. And actually what it wants us to do right now is link a repository such as our Git repository from Bitbucket. But what I want to do right now is just create the build plan without any repository linked. So to bypass this, I'm going to select Link New Repository, and then under Other, I'm going to select None. And that allows us to just create this plan without linking it to a repository right out of the gate. I'll go ahead and select Configure Plan, and that takes me to the next configuration screen where I can specify the tasks that I want to be executed when this build plan runs. So I'm going to again bypass that, and just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to leave this disabled for now, and I'm just going to say create there. And now what we've done is created a build plan. Granted, it doesn't have anything in it yet, but we've created just the shell of a build plan. So I'm going to go back to the Bamboo dashboard again, and now you can see under the examples, because that was the project that I created this new build plan under, I have this existing entry that was out there, as well as my new entry that I just created. So here is the new RG-Video Example project that was just created. You can see that under the build column, it specifies never built, and there's really no other information on there because a build has not been executed yet. So we've gotten far enough to create this build plan, even though it doesn't have anything in it yet. Off to the right-hand side now, I have a couple different options. One is to enable this build plan, and because we have not enabled it yet, if you note I skipped over checking the box to enable it, I can select this to enable it, and then we can select the pencil to edit this build plan. And that's what I want to do now. We're going to go through and add a little bit more to this build plan now. Alright, so under the build plan, when I'm editing, this is the screen that you'll see. This is the configuration area for this build plan. You can see that there are a lot of details across the top of here, a lot of different tabs. And we're going to dig into only a couple of those for simplicity's sake. But let's start out with looking at the stages. This is the default screen that it takes you to. And again, for the sake of simplicity in this course, we're only going to be looking at the default job. We could add additional jobs here, but everything we're going to do is going to be under this default job. Again, just for simplicity's sake. I'm going to go ahead and select default job. And within the default job now, this is where we can specify the tasks that we want to get executed every time that this build plan runs. So the build plan, we know because it's going to be building our application or going through this build process of our application, it's going to need access to the source code. So right out of the gate, we probably want to link this up to our source control repository, and in this case, our Git repository. So I'm going to go ahead and add task, and that brings up this dialog where we can select the type of task we want to add, and you can see there's a pretty long list here. There are also the filters on the left-hand side of the categories. I'm going to select source control. And the one that I want is source code checkout. And the description is checkout from a repository. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. For our task description, I'm going to go ahead and specify checkout source code. And now for the repository, there is no default repository. So what I'm going to actually need to do is add a repository for this source code checkout task. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of here, and I'm going to go back to my plan configuration, and here I'm going to add a new repository link under repositories. So here we're going to go ahead and add a repository, and my repository host, I'm going to specify Bitbucket. For my name, I'm just going to do rg-sandbox. And for you can specify your team repository name. This name is really just for you to be able to reference it. Again, I like to include my initials just to keep things unique. My username, now I'm going to specify my Bitbucket username. And what's very important about this, an important distinction to make here, is if you enter your Bitbucket email address, this will fail. So you need to make sure to specify your Bitbucket username. And if I go over to where I'm logged into Bitbucket here, now I'm on Bitbucket's website, you can usually see that in the URL when you're in Bitbucket. So it'll be / and then your username. Another way I believe you can view that is to go to View Profile, and then under your profile it specifies in parentheses your username. So you want to make sure to specify that username and not the email address that you would use to log into Bitbucket. All right, now for my password. And then you will select the Load Repositories button. And what that should do is load the list of all of the repositories that are associated with your account. Now I have a pretty long list because I am part of several repositories. But the repository that I'm going to select for this example is my CAD Sandbox repository. I'm going to leave that as the default branch master. And then I'm going to specify Save Repository. And now it says our repository was created successfully. So now I'm going to go back under Stages, and I'm going to find my default job once again. And again, we have no tasks because we had to back out from creating our source control checkout task. But once again, I'm going to select my source control checkout. And for my task description, again, I'm going to do checkout source code. My repository now, it defaulted to the one available to me, which is my rg-sandbox. And now it asks me for an optional checkout directory, which I'm not going to populate. We can leave that as default. And I am going to tick this box for force a clean build. It warns you that this may increase build times, but for the scope of what we're working on, that's very, very minimal. So I'm going to go ahead and say save. And now we have a source code checkout task. So you can see that before where it said we had no tasks, we now have one task. If I select this task, I can configure this further if needed. So I'm just going to cancel here. And again, if I go back to the dashboard, again, here you can see is my RG video example plan, never executed yet. If I want to edit that, I can come right back in by hitting the pencil, select my default job, and again, here's my list of tasks that I can configure. All right, the next thing we need to do is enable this task. So you can see that by going under the job tab that the job is enabled. However, that is just for this default job. We actually want to go back up to the plan configuration, and under the plan details now is where we can check the box to officially enable this plan. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And once again, we'll go back to the dashboard. And here you can see now where there used to be a little power button to enable the plan, there's now a little play button. So I'm going to go ahead and run this plan. And it should just take a few seconds. And it looks like the build has completed successfully. So we see a green check mark. And if I select the number 1 here, it gives me some information on this build. So for example, it tells me the duration. It took all of 1 second to run that job. It lets me know if there are any unit tests that I've linked up. It specifies any commits that were part of this checkout from source control, which we'll see more as you do commits and you incorporate this more regularly. And one of the big things is the logs. So if there is a log, we can view it at this point. So it shows us all of the steps that the Bamboo application took in running this build plan.